The ocean stretched endlessly beneath us, blue and glimmering like a secret that refused to be told. If I closed my eyes, I could almost forget how exhausted I was, how swollen my ankles felt, how every breath carried both joy and fear. We were finally here, our baby moon. A last little adventure before our lives changed forever. I rested my hand on my growing belly as the ship rocked gently beneath my feet. The breeze was warm and carried hints of salt and sunscreen. Laughter from other couples echoing across the deck. It felt cinematic, like the kind of happiness people post about online. For a moment, I believed it too. My husband Ethan leaned on the railing beside me, staring at the horizon. His face was unreadable, shadowed by the brim of his hat. He'd been quieter lately, distant in a way that felt like a draft through a closed window, but I told myself it was just stress. The pregnancy, work, the fear of becoming parents. Everyone said it happens, so I smiled, because that's what I do. I fix the silence before it turns into something worse. Can you believe it? I said softly. In just a few months, we'll be holding our baby. He glanced at me, and for a flicker of a second, he smiled back. Yeah, he murmured. Crazy, right? His hand brushed my back, absent-minded, almost like muscle memory. I tried to ignore how empty it felt. We'd been together for 10 years, married for 2. We'd survived long distance, job layoffs, and even his mother's disapproval when I didn't take his last name. We were supposed to be the couple that made it. That's why when he suggested this cruise, a week at sea, no phones, no work, I thought it was his way of showing love again. But now, watching him sip his drink in silence, I felt a strange ache crawl into my chest. Something wasn't right. That evening, I stood on the balcony outside our cabin, watching the sunset melt into gold. The ship's horn bellowed low and distant, and I could smell dinner drifting up from the dining hall below. Garlic, butter, something rich and indulgent I used to love but couldn't stomach anymore. Ethan was inside, scrolling through his phone even though we'd agreed this trip would be screen-free. He hadn't looked at me properly all day. I pressed my hand against the railing, feeling the cool metal beneath my palm. Do you remember our first vacation? I asked, loud enough for him to hear through the open door. The cabin in Lake Arrowhead, I said. You almost burned the place down trying to light the fireplace. That got a small laugh out of him. Yeah, you screamed like I set the woods on fire. You did, I teased, though my heart wasn't in it. For a second, it almost felt normal. Then silence settled again. Thick, heavy. I turned back toward him. Ethan, are you okay? He looked up, startled, as if I'd caught him doing something wrong. Yeah, he said quickly. Just tired. But his voice cracked slightly. An old habit I'd learned meant he was lying. Later, at dinner, I watched him push his food around his plate. We'd ordered something fancy. Steak for him, risotto for me, but neither of us seemed to taste it. I tried to talk about baby names, nursery colors, the stroller we'd been saving for. He nodded, but his eyes were somewhere else entirely. Finally, I set my fork down. Ethan, talk to me. Please. He blinked, like snapping out of a trance. What do you mean? You've been different. For weeks. It's like you're here, but not really here. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I told you, I'm just stressed. Work's been rough. Don't. I interrupted softly. Don't do that thing where you tell me it's fine so I'll stop asking. He met my eyes for the first time that night, and what I saw there terrified me. Not anger, not guilt, just emptiness. I don't know what's wrong, he said finally. I just feel lost. Lost how? He hesitated. Everything. My job. My goals. This. He gestured vaguely between us. I don't know who I am anymore. The air went still. The hum of the restaurant faded until all I could hear was the pulse in my ears. What are you saying? I whispered. I'm saying I'm not happy, he said quietly. Not with where I am. Not with us. My chest tightened so suddenly I couldn't breathe. I stared at him, the man I'd built my life around, as the words sank like stones. Ethan, are you saying you don't love me anymore? He shook his head quickly. No, I love you. Of course I do. He paused, eyes glancing away. I can't explain it. I feel like I can't be myself. Like I'm stuck. I waited for the rest. For the apology. For the reassurance. But it didn't come. Instead, he looked at me, and something colder, crueler, flickered behind his eyes. And, he said carefully, I think part of it is attraction. My world stopped moving. What do you mean? He exhaled, running his hand through his hair. You've changed, Claire. Physically. I know you're pregnant, and I love that you're carrying our baby, but it's been hard for me. I'm not. He stopped, swallowed hard. I'm not feeling attracted the way I used to. My hands went numb. It took me a moment to realize I was shaking. You're not attracted to me? I didn't say that exactly. You just did. He rubbed his face with both hands like he wanted to erase the moment. I'm being honest because I don't want this to turn into resentment. I just need time to figure things out. My laugh came out small and broken. Time? You think time fixes this? People at the nearby table turned slightly. I lowered my voice. I am carrying your child, Ethan. I'm exhausted. I'm sick half the day. And I'm still working full time. And you're telling me you're not attracted to me? He stared down at his plate. It's not like that. It's just, I miss how things were. Before. Before. Before my body changed. Before pregnancy. Before me. I wanted to stand up. Scream. Instead, I whispered, You could have waited until after the trip. He didn't answer. That night I lay awake in the dark, the ship rocking gently beneath us. Ethan was asleep, or pretending to be, his back turned toward me. I stared at the ceiling and listened to the faint hum of the engine, the soft splash of waves outside. My hand drifted to my belly, tracing its curve through the thin blanket. I'm sorry, I whispered to the tiny heartbeat inside me. I thought your dad loved us enough for forever. A single tear slid down my temple, disappearing into the pillow. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, warm and cruel. Ethan was already up, sitting by the balcony, scrolling through his phone again. I wanted to ask what he was reading. I wanted to scream. But instead, I said the only thing I could manage. Do you want coffee? He nodded without looking up. Yeah, thanks. I poured it for him, my hands trembling just enough for a drop to spill. Ethan, I said quietly, I need you to be honest with me. Do you regret this? He frowned. What? Us. The baby. Everything. He hesitated too long before answering. No, he said finally. I don't regret it. I just don't know who I am anymore. That's when I realized he wasn't lying to hurt me. He was telling the truth. And somehow, that hurt even more. Because how do you fix something that isn't broken out of anger, but out of emptiness? Later that day, I went alone to the ship's deck. The sea wind tangled my hair, and the sound of the waves drowned everything but my heartbeat. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who laughed easily, who believed love was unshakable, who never doubted her worth. She felt like a stranger now. I gripped the railing and whispered, Please don't let me disappear like this. A passing couple walked by, holding hands, laughing about something small and stupid. I looked away before envy could turn to tears. That night, Ethan suggested dinner again. He said he wanted to talk, Really talk. I agreed, but deep down, I already knew. Something had cracked between us that couldn't be glued back. Still, I hoped. Because hope was all I had left. He said it wasn't about me, that it was about him. But when I learned the truth about what he'd been hiding, I realized the man I loved had already left long before that cruise ever began. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the small line of moonlight cutting through the curtains, slicing across the hotel white sheets that separated me and the man I thought would never make me feel alone. The room was too quiet. I could hear the distant hum of the ship's engine, the faint echo of laughter from the deck above, and Ethan's steady breathing beside me, calm, unbothered, as if nothing had happened. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice again. I'm just not feeling attracted to you. The words replayed like a broken song, each repetition cutting deeper. I kept telling myself it was just hormones. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was sensitive. But how do you unhear the sentence that splits your heart in half? Morning came, but it didn't bring peace. It brought sunlight that felt too bright, laughter from strangers that felt too loud, and the cruel irony of paradise that no longer felt like one. Ethan pretended nothing had changed. He asked if I wanted breakfast, if I wanted to explore the ship, if I wanted to go snorkeling, as if wanting anything was even possible now. I said no. I told him I was tired. He nodded, almost relieved, and said he'd go for a walk. When the door closed behind him, the air in the cabin shifted. Lighter, lonelier. I sat by the mirror and stared at my reflection. My cheeks were rounder, my arms softer, my belly stretched and full. Life growing inside me, but I couldn't even recognize the woman carrying it. For the first time in my life, I didn't see beautiful, I saw replaceable. I pressed my hands to my face and whispered, "Why now, Ethan? Why on our baby moon? Why when I needed you most?" But the room stayed silent. I tried to distract myself, open the little cruise brochure, watch the waves through the balcony glass. Everywhere I looked, I saw couples, holding hands, laughing, touching without fear. And all I could think was, that used to be us. I remembered the day he proposed, trembling hands, eyes full of certainty. He said, "You make me feel like home." Now he could barely look at me. I walked out onto the balcony, letting the wind slap my hair against my face. The sea below was endless, and for a wild moment I understood why people say heartbreak feels like drowning, because you're still breathing, but you wish the waves would stop moving. Hours passed before Ethan came back. He smelled faintly of cologne, the kind he hadn't worn since before the pregnancy. "Hey," he said, like nothing was wrong. "You okay?" I didn't look up from the journal I was pretending to write in. "Just tired." He hesitated by the door, his body half turned toward me, half turned away. That in-between stance, like he couldn't decide whether to stay or go, it broke something inside me I didn't even know was still intact. "I think we should talk," I said quietly. He sighed, sat on the edge of the bed, and said, "Okay. Let's talk." I closed the journal. "You told me last night you're not attracted to me anymore. Do you know what that does to a woman who's carrying your child?" He rubbed his hands over his face. "It came out wrong, Claire. I shouldn't have said it like that." "Like what?" I snapped. "Like the truth?" He looked up sharply. "You wanted honesty, didn't you? Not cruelty." The word echoed against the walls. He stood pacing the small room. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just feel disconnected. From everything. From myself. From us. It's not about you." I laughed bitterly. "You said it was about my body, Ethan." I said it's part of it. I know that sounds awful, but I don't know how to lie about it anymore. He stopped moving, and for a second, he looked like the man I married, terrified of losing me, but too lost to know how to hold on. "Claire," He said softly, "I still love you." That hasn't changed. I looked at him, really looked, and realized that love isn't the same as desire. Sometimes love is a memory someone keeps repeating to themselves because they don't know what else to do. And I realized something else too. He wasn't saying this to end us. He was saying it because, in his heart, we already had. That night, the cruise hosted a starlight dinner on the top deck. Couples dressed in glowing white, clinking champagne glasses under fairy lights and music that sounded like promises. Ethan wanted to go. I didn't. He said, "It'll be good for us." A reset. And like always, I gave in. Because I was tired of fighting silence with silence. I put on a dress I'd packed months ago, one that barely fit now. When I stepped out of the bathroom, Ethan looked at me for a moment too long, and I almost thought maybe, just maybe, he saw me again. But then he smiled, polite and distant, and said, "You look nice. Not beautiful, not stunning, just nice." The kind of word you use when you've run out of adjectives for love. Dinner was candlelit, elegant, perfect. But every bite I took felt heavy. Every laugh from another table sounded cruel. Halfway through the meal, Ethan reached across the table, touched my hand gently, and said, "I'm sorry for how I said things." I swallowed hard. "But not for what you said." He looked down. "No." Tears burned behind my eyes. I forced a smile so wide it hurt. "Then there's nothing to fix, is there?" He shook his head. "That's not true. I want to fix it. I just don't know how." "Maybe you don't," I whispered. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. And then, as if the universe wanted to mock us, fireworks exploded above the ship, bright, beautiful, loud. Everyone around us gasped and clapped. I just stared at the reflection of the fireworks in his eyes, flickering light over something that already felt like ashes. When we returned to our cabin, Ethan said he was going to get some air. I said, "Okay." He left without kissing me goodnight. When the door closed, I slid down to the floor and finally let the sob I'd been holding escape. Pregnancy hormones or heartbreak. I couldn't tell anymore which was which. I whispered to the silence, "Why do men only realize what they have after they've already destroyed it?" Outside, the waves kept rolling, unbothered by my pain. Inside, my baby kicked for the first time that night. Soft, gentle, alive. And somehow, that broke me even more, because life was growing inside me while the love that created it was dying right beside me. The next morning, I saw a message on his phone, one that made my blood run cold. He said he wasn't attracted to me, but it turned out he'd found someone he was. The next morning, sunlight poured into the cabin like an accusation. It was too bright, too cheerful for the wreckage inside me. Ethan wasn't there. The sheets beside me were cold, neatly folded, as if no one had ever slept in them. For a second, I thought maybe I'd dreamt it all. His confession, his distance, the sound of fireworks muffled by my tears. But then I saw his suitcase still half open on the floor, and the wedding ring he'd left on the bathroom counter while shaving. Reality hit me like the motion of the ship. Steady, relentless, impossible to escape. I checked my phone, hoping for a message. Nothing. I told myself not to panic. Maybe he was just getting breakfast. Maybe he went for air again. But an ache in my chest whispered something colder. He needed space. And maybe not just from me. Hours passed. By noon, I was pacing the room, trying to breathe through another wave of panic. Then, his phone buzzed on the table. Once, then again. My heart stopped. He'd left it unlocked. I didn't want to look. I told myself I wouldn't. But curiosity mixed with fear is a poison, and it always wins. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize. Sabrina. A message previewed. "Wish you were here instead of her. You deserve to feel alive again. My vision blurred. I tapped it open before I could stop myself. There were more messages, weeks of them, little fragments of flirtation, inside jokes, late-night texts, confessions. She doesn't understand me anymore. I miss how you make me feel seen. This cruise might help me figure out what I want. Each line stabbed deeper than the last. It wasn't just attraction he'd lost. It was loyalty. I dropped the phone, my hands shaking so hard I nearly threw up. The room spun. How long had this been going on? Before the pregnancy? During? And suddenly his confusion, his distance, his cruel honesty, it all made sense. He wasn't confused. He was already halfway gone. A knock at the door made me jump. I swiped at my tears, shoved the phone under a pillow, and opened it. It was Ethan, hair damp, sunglasses still on, holding 2 drinks. "Hey," he said lightly, "I got us smoothies." I stared at him, trying to decide if he could tell that I knew. He didn't even look guilty, just tired. I forced a smile. "Thanks." He handed me one, sat down, and scrolled through his phone. The same phone that held every lie he'd told me about honesty. I watched him for a long moment, studying the man I'd shared a decade with. He still looked like the boy who used to write love notes on napkins, who once waited outside my college classes with coffee just to see me smile. But that version of him was long gone, buried somewhere between the truth and the person texting him hearts behind my back. "Ethan," I said quietly, "can I ask you something?" He looked up. "Sure." "When did you stop loving me?" He blinked, surprised. "I never stopped loving you, Claire." I tilted my head. "Then who's Sabrina?" The color drained from his face. The smoothie cup slipped slightly in his hand. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. For a long, excruciating silence, the only sound was the soft hum of the ship engine below us. Steady, merciless. Finally, he said, "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," I snapped. "She's just someone I talk to." "We met at the gym months ago. It's not physical, it's just—" He trailed off. "She listens." Listens. I laughed bitterly. "You're married to someone who begged to know what was wrong, and you chose a stranger instead?" "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple, Ethan," I shouted. "You felt seen by someone who didn't have morning sickness, swollen ankles, or the audacity to love you through your midlife confusion." His jaw tightened. "You're being dramatic." "Dramatic?" I stepped closer. "You told me you're not attracted to me. You told me you don't know if you're happy with me. And now I find out you're emotionally cheating while I'm pregnant with your child. And I'm being dramatic?" He looked away. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "No one ever does," I whispered. I turned toward the balcony, my heart pounding so hard I could barely see straight. The ocean stretched endlessly ahead, calm, cruel, and indifferent. Somewhere in that horizon, I realized something terrifying. I had built my entire world around a man who saw me as an option. And now, standing there with our child inside me, I finally understood. I couldn't depend on someone who treated love like a phase. He tried to speak. "Claire, please." But I held up my hand. "I don't want an apology. I just want honesty. The kind you said I deserved." He opened his mouth, then closed it. And that silence told me more than any confession ever could. That night, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't broken, but because I was empty. There's a kind of pain that's too deep for tears. I sat by the window long after he'd fallen asleep, watching the dark waves roll under the moonlight. Somewhere below, the ocean kept secrets too. Maybe that's why I understood it now. As the ship moved forward, I whispered to the child inside me, "I don't know what our future looks like, baby, but I promise you this. I won't let you grow up thinking love means being someone's second choice. If you've ever loved someone who made you feel like you weren't enough, you know this kind of heartbreak. But stay with me, because what happened next proved that sometimes the person who breaks you is the same person who teaches you how strong you really are. And trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. The next morning, the ship was docked at a small island port. Tourists were buzzing with excitement, snapping photos, planning excursions. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling. Ethan had gone out early. Again. He left a note on the dresser. Didn't want to wake you. Going snorkeling. Love you, love you. 2 words that used to sound like home. Now they felt like a stranger using my language. I read it twice, then tore it quietly down the middle. Half went into the trash, half I kept. Not out of sentiment, but proof. Proof that even lies can look gentle in handwriting. The hours crawled. I couldn't stop imagining him, laughing with someone else, feeling light and free while I drowned in our silence. The more I tried to breathe, the heavier the air felt. Finally, I stood up, got dressed, and walked to the deck. The sea stretched endlessly, too calm for how my heart felt. I thought about texting him, asking where he was, pretending everything was fine. But something inside me whispered, no more pretending. So instead, I went to the spa, not because I cared about pampering myself, but because I wanted to remember what it felt like to exist outside of his orbit. When the masseuse asked, "Tough week?" I almost laughed. I wanted to say, "My husband fell out of love with me while our child was still forming." But instead, I just nodded. Something like that. As her hands worked through the knots in my shoulders, I realized how long I'd been holding everything in. Fear, shame, exhaustion, disappointment. Every muscle carried a secret I hadn't told anyone. By the time she finished, I didn't feel beautiful, but I did feel awake. Later, when I walked past the pool deck, I saw Ethan. He was sitting with 2 men and a woman, laughing, drinking, his hand casually resting near the woman's arm. She was tall, slim, tan. The kind of effortless beauty that didn't need effort. When she threw her head back and laughed, I felt something inside me twist. He noticed me. Our eyes met across the crowd. For a split second, guilt flickered in his expression. Then it was gone, replaced by practiced calm. He raised his glass slightly, as if to say hi, like I was an acquaintance, not the woman carrying his child. I turned and walked away. I didn't cry. Not yet. But the tears were building, not from weakness, but from the weight of all the things I'd never said. That evening, the sky changed. Dark clouds rolled in, thick, low, and rumbling with thunder. The captain announced that a storm was approaching and passengers should remain indoors. I sat on the balcony anyway, watching the wind whip the waves into silver chaos. It felt fitting. For once, the world looked like how I felt inside. The door opened behind me. Ethan stepped out, rubbing his temples. "Claire, come inside. It's dangerous." "I'll be fine." He sighed. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. He sat beside me anyway, leaving a cautious space between us. Rain spattered against the railing, tiny echoes between every word he didn't say. "I know you saw the messages," he said finally. I turned to him slowly. "And?" "It wasn't serious." I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You told another woman you wished she were here instead of me, and that's not serious?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "It was stupid. I was lonely. I needed to feel something." "You had a wife who's 5 months pregnant with your child," I said quietly. "You had everything real. And you threw it away for something temporary." "I didn't throw it away," he snapped. I don't know who I am anymore." "That's the problem," I said. You don't know who you are, but somehow you made me the mirror for your confusion. He blinked, caught off guard. What's that supposed to mean? It means you looked at me, at the body that carried your child, and decided it reflected everything you hated about yourself. You stopped being proud of your life, and you blame me for it. For once, he didn't have a comeback. He just looked small. Rain started to fall harder. The sea churned below us. You used to tell me, I said softly, that I was the best thing that ever happened to you. He stared down at his hands. You still are? No, I said, standing slowly. I was, but not anymore. He looked up, panic flickering in his eyes. Claire. I held up my hand. You don't get to say my name like that anymore. And then I walked inside, shutting the balcony door behind me. That night, as thunder cracked across the horizon, I lay in bed wide awake. Ethan slept in the chair across the room, snoring softly, the distance between us finally matching the distance inside us. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel powerless. I felt clear, like the storm outside had washed something clean inside me. I placed a hand on my stomach and whispered, maybe this is what strength feels like. Breaking and still choosing to rebuild. The ship rocked gently beneath us, and for the first time I wasn't afraid of the waves. I was learning how to float. But the next morning, something happened that no one saw coming. The ship made an emergency stop, and in the chaos, I discovered something that would change everything I thought I knew about Ethan and myself. The storm hit harder than anyone expected. By morning, the sky was a bruise, gray, heavy, trembling with thunder. The ship's hallways echoed with nervous footsteps and hurried announcements. Attention, passengers! For your safety, all outdoor areas are temporarily closed. Please remain indoors. But the chaos outside was nothing compared to the chaos inside me. Ethan hadn't spoken since our fight. He'd packed a small bag claiming he needed space. Where do you find space on a ship in the middle of the ocean? I didn't ask. I didn't care. For once, I wasn't chasing him. I stood by the cabin window, watching the rain race down the glass, tracing the same patterns my tears had made the night before. Each drop fell, collided, and disappeared. Just like us. Around noon, there was a knock on the door. I hesitated, half expecting it to be him, ready with another excuse or half-truth. But when I opened it, it was a crew member holding an envelope. Mrs. Carter? He asked politely. This was left for you at the front desk. I frowned. By who? He shrugged. A woman. Said it was important. My stomach tightened. A woman. I took the envelope. My name was written in messy handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single folded note. You deserve to know the truth before he destroys more than your heart. No name, no explanation, just a printed photo clipped to the paper. It was Ethan, at a restaurant, holding hands across the table with the same woman I'd seen yesterday on the deck. Not Sabrina. Someone else. The timestamp was 2 weeks ago, before the cruise even started. My breath caught. So this wasn't confusion. This was pattern. I gripped the edge of the bed to steady myself. The room tilted, my pulse roaring in my ears. For 10 years, I'd built my world around a man whose loyalty had more cracks than the ocean had waves. And now, 5 months pregnant, trapped on a ship in a storm, I was realizing he didn't just lose attraction, he lost integrity. I found him in the lounge an hour later, staring out at the storm with a drink in his hand. His reflection in the window looked almost poetic, the tortured man who didn't know what he wanted. For once, I wasn't afraid to interrupt the performance. I slid the photo across the table. He blinked. What's this? Another woman, I said quietly. Not Sabrina. Someone else. Do you even remember her name? His face changed. Panic, then denial, then exhaustion. Where did you get this? So it's real, I said. He rubbed his temples. It was before this trip. It meant nothing. Everything you do means nothing, doesn't it? I said bitterly. You betray me emotionally, then physically, and every time, it's nothing. He slammed his glass down. I'm trying, Claire. I told you I'm lost. You think I wanted to hurt you? I leaned forward, my voice sharp but trembling. You didn't just hurt me, Ethan. You broke something you can't fix. You made me believe I was the problem, that if I were thinner, prettier, quieter, you'd love me again. He looked down. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. I snapped. You don't get to talk about love when all you've done is run from it. The ship lurched violently, cutting through our fight. Glasses slid off tables. Someone screamed down the hall. The storm outside had turned vicious, waves slamming against the hull with terrifying force. Ethan steadied himself against the wall. We should get back to the room. But I didn't move. I stared out at the angry sea, heart pounding, tears mixing with the sweat on my face. Do you even realize what you've done to me? I whispered. He turned, his expression unreadable. I never stopped loving you, he said softly. I shook my head. You stopped respecting me. And that's worse. When the next wave hit, the power flickered. The lights went out for a moment, and in that darkness, I made a choice. Not the kind that screams or throws things. The quiet kind. The kind that changes everything. When the lights came back, I said, I'm done, Ethan. He froze. What do you mean? I mean, I'll finish this cruise. I'll smile when people look. But when we dock, you won't see me again. Not in our house, not in our bed, not in your reflection. I'm done being small so you can feel big. His voice cracked. You're serious? I nodded. I'm 5 months pregnant. And somehow, I've never felt more alone than I do right now. But I'd rather be alone than unloved. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then the ship tilted again, hard. A wave crashed over the deck, rattling the windows. Ethan reached for me instinctively, but I stepped back. I can stand on my own, I said quietly. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time, not as a wife or a burden, but as a woman reclaiming something he'd stolen, her self-worth. That night, I packed my suitcase. Not everything, just enough to start over. Clothes, documents, the ultrasound photo. I left the torn half of his love you note on the bed. A reminder that love without loyalty isn't love at all. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. The ship kept pushing forward. Through the waves, through the noise, through the wreckage. And so did I. But I didn't know the storm wasn't done with me yet. The next morning, something happened that would make Ethan beg for forgiveness and force me to choose between revenge and freedom. This act completes the cinematic narrative arc. Heartbreak Arrow Confrontation, Arrow Rebirth. It's written in clean, engaging voiceover flow, ready for YouTube storytelling. 60 to 75-minute runtime. The storm finally broke just before dawn. The ship was silent, except for the slow hum of engines pushing us toward calm water. For the first time in days, the sky was soft, streaks of pink breaking through the gray. I stood on the balcony, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket. Salt clung to the air. My hair was tangled, my eyes swollen from crying, but I didn't care. I wasn't thinking about Ethan anymore. I was thinking about survival. Not the kind where you cling to someone who breaks you. The kind where you stand up, shaking, and say, I deserve better. When I turned around, Ethan was awake. He looked smaller somehow, slumped, defeated, the arrogance washed away with the storm. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Two strangers sharing the same wreck. Claire, he said quietly, I don't expect forgiveness. I just, I don't know how to be without you. I watched him carefully, choosing my words like fragile glass. You don't know how to be without anyone who makes you feel seen, I said. That's your problem. He nodded slowly. You're right. It wasn't defiance this time. It was surrender. He took a deep breath. I ended things with Sabrina before we came here. The other woman, too. I thought this trip would fix us. But I see now I came here to escape myself. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because his words couldn't reach me anymore. There comes a point when the apology arrives too late, when healing means silence, not conversation. We docked that afternoon. Couples held hands, families took photos, and somewhere between the laughter and the suitcases, I felt something strange. Freedom. I wasn't sure what my next step was, but I knew one thing. It would be mine. Ethan followed me down the gangway, suitcase in hand, voice trembling. Where are you going? I smiled softly. Home. But we don't even. I'll find one, I said. You already did. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Just a single tear he tried to hide. The kind that comes when a man finally realizes what he's lost. I didn't turn back. At the airport, I booked a solo flight home. While waiting, I felt a flutter inside my belly. A small kick, gentle but firm. I smiled through tears. Hey, little one, I whispered. Guess it's just us now. And for the first time since everything fell apart, that didn't sound scary. It sounded sacred. Weeks passed. The cruise became a memory, distant, like a movie I once cried through. Ethan tried calling a few times. I didn't answer. He sent flowers. I donated them to the hospital waiting room. I didn't hate him. I just didn't need him anymore. I moved in with my sister until I could get my own place. I found a small part-time job at a local cafe. And at night, I'd sit on the porch, feeling the baby kick, whispering promises to the life inside me. You'll grow up knowing love that doesn't break you. You'll learn that beauty isn't how thin you are or how someone else sees you. It's how strong you become when the world tries to unmake you. One evening, as I closed the cafe, I saw Ethan standing across the street. He looked different, tired, remorseful, smaller. He walked over slowly, hands in his pockets. I just wanted to say goodbye, he said softly. I've started therapy. I know it's too late, but I'm trying to be better. I nodded. Good. He hesitated. Can I be in the baby's life? I looked at him for a long moment. I saw the man I once loved, the one who held me through storms and laughed like life was endless. And then I saw the man who made me cry myself to sleep on a cruise meant to celebrate our family. Maybe one day, I said, when I know you won't hurt them the way you hurt me. He nodded, eyes glistening. Take care, Claire. I will, I said. You should too. And with that, we finally let go. Months later, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. When the nurse placed her in my arms, I cried. Not from pain, but from peace. Her tiny fingers wrapped around mine like she'd been waiting for this moment forever. I whispered, You saved me, you know that. You made me choose myself. The nurse smiled softly. You're going to be a great mom. I laughed quietly. I already am. I just didn't know it yet. One night, as my baby slept beside me, I opened my journal, the same one I'd been writing in on the ship. The last entry had ended mid-sentence, right before everything broke. Now, I finished it. Sometimes love doesn't end in a crash. Sometimes it ends in a whisper. The moment you stop chasing what hurts and start walking toward what heals. I closed the book and looked at my daughter. Outside, the rain tapped softly against the window. Not a storm this time, just a lullaby. And I finally smiled. Not because life was perfect, but because I was free. For anyone watching this, if you've ever stayed in a relationship because you thought leaving meant failing, remember this. Walking away from someone who no longer values you is not failure, it's freedom. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful true stories. And share it with someone who needs to hear that love should never make you feel small.